Episode 332. Today we're talking about NHL Network, their 50 to 41 list in terms of the best players in the league. And they do this ranking every year. It's obviously a ranking where it's really tough to analyze, tough to decipher who the best 50 players are in the league. Because I feel like, especially early on, from the 50 to 30 range, it could really almost go anywhere. As you climb yourself into the 20s and the 10s, I feel like that's where it gets more solidified in terms of the list. But it's I give him credit because this is obviously a tough list to do every single year, and obviously the top end of it's a little bit easier, but the 50 to 30 range, like I mentioned, a little bit tougher. So we'll start with the list in terms of what they put out yesterday. And so 50 was Alex Ovechkin, 49 Jason Robertson, 48 Clayton Keller, 47 Brady Tkachuk, 46 Brandon Hagel, 45 Jesper Bratt, 44, Jake Gensel. 43, Jake Sanderson. 42, Tim Stützle. 41, Dylan Larkin. So that's the list. I think overall, pretty solid list. And a couple guys who I really liked seeing on there. And I I really liked seeing Brandon Hagel, Jake Gensel, Jake Sanderson on there. I think those are really solidified guys. I actually really like seeing Clayton Keller in that mix as well and Tim Stützle. But I think the three that really popped out at me were Hagel and then Gensel and then Sanderson. I think those are the three that are a little bit more standoutish, you could say, in terms of this list. And put them any way you want. I really feel like it could go any way. But Brandon Hagel, I'm obviously a little bit biased here just because I've followed him a lot more throughout his career, coming out of junior, going to Rockford in the AHL, working his way up to Chicago, being a really solid middle six slash top nine guy early on in his career for Chicago, and then he blossoms into a consistent top six all around forward and top line, more of a top line all around forward now for Tampa Bay. So with Hagel, just a guy I really enjoy seeing on here. He went from a guy who was thrown around different development camps at the time. I think he was in Montreal. I think there was a time where he was in Buffalo, just other camps, and now he's turned into a top player in the league and put in a lot of work, put in a lot of sacrifice, and it's turned out really well for him. So with Hagel, just a guy I really enjoy seeing on there. He deserves it. I think he's really turned himself into one of the best players in the league because of his ability to play an all-around game. He can be a playmaker, he can be a shooter, he can be a guy you can rely upon in many different roles on the power play, also on the penalty kill as well. And I think he's a guy you can basically rely upon in all situations. He's very fun to watch too. And honestly, I think over the course of time has improved his skating too. That used to be a big flaw of his, but he's gotten to the point where he's more of an above average skater, not an elite skater now. But as long as he has the ability to get around and move, and he can still use that hockey sense and shooting component and playmaking component, he's gonna be fine. And I think it'll work out for him. But just a guy I really enjoy seeing on there and on that list. Same with Jake Gensel, another Tampa guy, very consistent. They mentioned on the broadcast saying that he plays a very simple game, but they meant that in a good way. And I totally see what they're saying. I think with Gensel, you're getting a guy, he plays simple. He doesn't play like a flashy style or anything like that, but you know you're getting out of him every single game. Again, a guy who brings that motor, he brings that relentless work ethic, ton of really good detailed habits into his offensive ability, but also his defensive ability, and a guy you can rely upon in many key situations as well, and brings a high motor, ton of intensity to his game, ton of pace, ton of energy, and just a very reliable all-around player for them. So it's good to see him crack their list. And arguably my favorite seeing crack this list was Jake Sanderson. I think Jake Sanderson turned into a guy, and I wasn't necessarily super fond of Jake Sanderson coming out of junior because I wasn't sure what he was going to be. I wasn't sure if he was going to be a top four guy. I wasn't sure if he was going to be a top six defenseman. I wasn't sure if he had the potential to be a top two defenseman, but I'm glad now that he proved me wrong, and I've been able to see a translatable style defenseman differently. I think that allowed me to see the game a little bit better because not just of his ability to translate, but the way he translates so quick to the NHL, like he brought a translatable style of shutdown play, and in turn he added elements over the course of time to his skating ability and offensive ability. So at his junior age, he already had the shutdown ability, he already had the skating ability. So my thought process was now looking back. okay, he has those two components. He can build on his offensive ability, use a little bit more reception. Like these are things he can actually work on. Like the skating and the shutdown ability component, hard to work on at that age and have it translate over time. But when you add layers to your offensive game and then you're able to add layers to how you play as a transitional defenseman, those are all little mental switches that he could have worked on over the course of time. And clearly he's worked on his offensive game to the point where he's become more of an offensive defenseman now. So I look back and I'm actually thankful that I was wrong on him in my evaluation because it made me look at him and say, okay, if this player has at least a foundational element of skating, elite level skating, which he did at 17, 18 years old when he was playing with the program, the NTDP, and he had an elite shutdown game, he can only build on those things, right? He can only build offensively. He can learn power play ability. He can learn to control lanes in offensive situations. He can learn to control the rush. Like these are things he can learn. Doesn't necessarily have to be something where it's either you have it or you don't. Whereas with Sanderson, he's a guy that learned a lot of these habits over the course of time. And as he aged throughout junior, throughout college, and then eventually the NHL, and he's turned into a premier defenseman that way. He's turned into a he legitimate number one defenseman now. He had a career year last year. I'm really excited to see what he turns into this year. I could see him potentially racking up 70, maybe even 80 points. I don't think that's out of the question. I think the sky is the limit for him at this point in terms of what he could be. And I learned so much from watching his game translate up to every level that I was like, wow, this guy is legit. And I was very wrong on him at around 17, 18 years old because I had no idea what he could be. I could see that he had top four potential, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be number one, number two, number three, number four D. Like I thought he was going to be more of a second pairing D, but like I said, I was wrong. So I'm glad about that. Made me learn a little bit differently from the scouting perspective of how to evaluate a defenseman and components that can be learned within a defenseman's game. And he's an intriguing player to look at in terms of recent scouting years because he, when you look at him at 17, 18 years old, he wasn't a premier offensive guy, but he's turned into that in the NHL more than any other league. So that's been really exciting to watch. He's turned into one of my favorite players in the league, and that's legitimate because he brings so many valuable components to the game all around. He's literally turned into Ottawa's arguably most valuable player over the course of time. I'd say most valuable right next to Brady Tkachuk. Him and Brady Tkachuk have to be most valuable. I would say Tim Stützle is the most skilled, but in terms of most valuable, it would have to be either Sanderson or Tkachuk, and probably Tkachuk, but more of a 1A, 1B type thing because Sanderson was extremely valuable on the back end for them. He logged huge minutes. He's reliable in key situations offensively, defensively. You can rely upon him in transition. He can quarterback your first unit power play. And especially with Thomas Chabot going down for part of the year, he took advantage of that role. Like there's so many components to his game where you don't see a real flaw. And at that age, it's really intriguing to see. So by far one of my favorites to watch. Glad he cracked this list. Well deserved. But yeah, those are the few guys that really stood out. And I think the other one I really liked, and I kind of expected him to be there, was Clayton Keller. I think Clayton Keller has turned into a different player too as he's aged. He's turned into a leader. He's turned into a guy. Well, I should say that differently. I don't think you turn into a leader, but there's certain components that you have in your leadership from a young age that can translate up as you go. I think Clayton Keller had that probably at a younger age when he was around 17-ish, maybe even younger. But I think there's just certain components that Keller brings that has just added value to his game over the course of time. And the other thing I'm curious about is what type of player he'll be if Utah cracks the playoffs. And there's certainly a potential playoff run for them in the mix this year. I thought it would be last year, but this year with the addition of Peterka, this might push them over the hump legitimately. And you also have a bona fide starter who you can rely on for so many games in Carl Vejmelka. You have a good decor, and luckily they're healthy right now. Knock on wood, they stay that way. And a young, talented, speedy forward group with a ton of good prospects coming up through the system as well. So if you look at where Utah's at and their projection long term, they could very well become I wouldn't say a cup contender right away, but I would say they can be a team that could crack the playoffs and maybe do some damage in round one and the early rounds. I don't know about the back half in rounds three and four, but they might have that potential to be a team that can crack the playoffs, do some damage in rounds one and two, and who knows, they might be able to take it further from there. But Utah's an interesting team. They're going to be a really unique team to follow. Just some great players that cracked this list and great evaluations by NHL Network to start with.